Tonight, Impact Wrestling presents another episode of Impact Wrestling on AXS TV. Of course, it's already been taped in Skyway Studios there in Nashville, Tennessee. It's one of the episodes that was actually filmed back in November, early December of 2020, but officially it is the first episode of 2021, so it's going to be a very exciting show, especially considering the last couple of weeks we've seen the two best-of shows with the year-end awards, but certainly as we're now in 2021, we've got Genesis on the horizon, we've got Hard to Kill in a couple of weeks too, and we've also got the continued progression of the Bullet Club reunion in Impact Wrestling with AEW World Champion Kenny Omega, Impact Wrestling Executive Vice President Don Callis, and the Impact World Tag Team Champions, the Good Brothers. It's a very, very exciting time to be an Impact Wrestling fan and watching the show. So this is going to be a preview as to what to expect for tonight's show on AXS TV. So let's get straight into it. You can see it on the graphic there. It's the return of the Biz Cliz, Kenny Omega, the Good Brothers, and Don Callis, because after their historic match against Rich Swann, against Impact World Champion Rich Swann and the Motor City Machine Guns at Hard to Kill approaches, AEW World Champion Kenny Omega, the Impact Tag Team Champions, the Good Brothers, and Don Callis will appear tonight on Impact Wrestling. What are they going to talk about? I'm sure it will just be another vignette, another promo. We know that Kenny Omega isn't going to have any matches on Impact Wrestling TV, at least before Hard to Kill or anything like that. Maybe in the future, who knows? But right now, the circumstance and situation when it comes to Kenny Omega is that all of his content has been filmed in the same way that everyone else has, and we have to wait until Hard to Kill to see his first match. Coming out of that, though, it has been reported by various sources, Dave Meltzer being one of them, like that means anything, but Dave Meltzer being one of them, that Kenny Omega will be having multiple matches and headlining multiple events in Impact Wrestling. So this is the continued build to Hard to Kill. It's something that everyone is very excited for and enjoying. I think the momentum and the buzz has slightly dipped, I would suggest, when it comes to this AEW and Impact Wrestling crossover for a variety of reasons with everything that's been going on recently, and in addition to that, the two episodes, the 2 weeks that have passed with the best of and the end of year awards, obviously some of the momentum has died off. So this is really important to build back up that momentum that Impact Wrestling had in December last year with this big crossover with AEW. What is going to be fascinating to see, of course, is the ratings. Now, obviously, we don't get it started too much in ratings. Do they matter? Don't they matter? Obviously, that's a discussion for another time, and it's a discussion that I've had multiple times here on the channel, but it certainly is going to be interesting to see if coming into 2021, a brand new year, with this AEW relationship, as Hard to Kill and Genesis on the horizon, are we going to see a bit more of an upturn now, back to the numbers that they did the first time Kenny Omega made the appearance on Impact Wrestling? I don't think so. I think that could happen in the coming weeks, especially after Hard to Kill. We'll have to wait and see. When it comes to what we'll actually see tonight from the Good Brothers, Omega and Callis, again, it's just going to be a vignette. They did a lot of filming with Kenny Omega a couple of weeks ago in Florida, and I'm sure they've cut them up, spliced them up, and they're going to be in the Impact Wrestling episodes as we head into Hard to Kill in a couple of weeks' time. But nevertheless, it's going to be very exciting to see this continuation of what this storyline will be, and also, are we going to get some more developments when it comes to Tony Khan and Tony Schiavone appearing on Impact Wrestling this week? I hope so. And also, are we going to see finally the Good Brothers come over to AEW on Wednesday night? That is certainly going to be something interesting as well, because that's been heavily rumoured and talked about for the last few weeks. Given that Kenny Omega is now back in a faction with the Good Brothers and Don Callis, you would think eventually Impact Wrestling's World Tag Team Champions will follow them over to AEW Dynamite on TNT. We'll have to wait and see, of course. When they do, we'll talk about it here on the channel, so be sure to subscribe and you won't miss a single thing when it comes to that. But what else do we have that's scheduled for tonight's show? Well, we have a lot. A lot is scheduled for a big show for Impact Wrestling tonight, because we've got the blow-off match between Sami Callihan and Eddie Edwards, because we've got to brace ourselves, because Sami Callihan and Eddie Edwards are renewing their storied rivalry in an epic single showdown. Obviously, this is something that's been going on for years at this point. The tension has led to utter chaos, including the suspension of Sami Callihan's tag team partner Ken Shamrock after he attacked Impact Wrestling official D'Lo Brown. So this is being hyped up as the blow-off match, the final match in this big rivalry between Eddie Edwards and Sami Callihan. Now, I mentioned it before, and it's kind of divided opinion here on the channel, which always I find really interesting, because I love hearing from you guys. I love hearing everyone's opinions. I always say this before, that just because you have an opinion that's different to mine, I welcome that. That's what this channel is about. It's about being able to voice your opinion, being able to build a community here where we can share opinions, share our love of pro wrestling, but also see so many different viewpoints of what people like and don't like in pro wrestling. I mentioned it before when it comes to Sami Callihan and Eddie Edwards, that I felt that I was just a bit done with this rivalry, and I felt like they'd squeezed as much as they could get out of this rivalry. It's been going on for years at this point, and I understand people's points of view when they say, well, the best thing about this rivalry is that they keep revisiting it. There'll always be rivals. There's this ton of history, and it's always going to be a big match, and I get that. But I do feel like with the start of a new year, it's time to do different things. It's time to have new feuds. And I understand they've added in different elements to this feud, whether it is Ken Shamrock, whether it is Eddie Edwards' wife Alicia, whether it is going back to the original eye injury with the baseball bat. I understand that, and I understand there is a lot of history there. I just don't know if it really piques my interest as much anymore. I want to see them do different things. I want to see Eddie Edwards try and fight back to get an Impact Wrestling World Championship opportunity again. I want to see Sami Callihan and Ken Shamrock win the tag team titles, maybe feud with the Good Brothers. We know Sami Callihan just signed a 2-year contract extension with Impact Wrestling. I want to see what that entails. I think there's lots of other stories to tell. I want to see Sami Callihan go and compete in the X Division and maybe try and infiltrate the Super X Cup at Genesis. I want to see lots of different things like that. So the match tonight, it will be great, and I'm sure I would think maybe be the main event. I don't know. We've got Knockouts Tag Team Title Tournament match as well. So I think it most likely will be the main event, and I'm sure it'll be a lot of fun. I just don't know if I ever trust a blow-off match in this feud, because ultimately it's probably something they will revisit again in the future as well. So no doubt it'll be a good match. As I mentioned, am I excited for it as much as I was previously? No. And there's probably reasons for that. But no doubt it'll be a good match. I have no doubt about that. We also have a 3-minute challenge tonight on Impact Wrestling on AXS TV as the TNA World Heavyweight Champion Moose goes up against Matthew Palmer. Now, Moose is out for revenge on what he calls indie wrestlers looking to make a name for themselves when he takes on Impact newcomer Matthew Palmer in a 3-minute challenge. Now, this comes after a physical altercation with Willie Mack recently on Impact. Palmer was standing there as a security guard and accidentally ripped Moose's shirt during the scuffle. Now, in an emotional interview, Palmer revealed that he's no security guard, he's a professional wrestler. Now, just days before the I Quit match against Willie Mack at Genesis, you can question, will Moose continue his path of destruction, or will Matthew Palmer prove that he belongs in Impact Wrestling by lasting 3 minutes with the self-proclaimed TNA World Heavyweight Champion? Now, this is going to be interesting because I think what they'll probably do here, if I had to predict the angle that they're going for here, it's a 3-minute challenge. I don't think if Palmer wins or survives the 3 minutes, he'll win the TNA World Heavyweight Championship or anything like that. I would suspect, given that we've got the Moose versus Willie Mack I Quit match coming up at Genesis soon, I would suspect that somehow what I would think happens is Moose basically dominates Matthew Palmer for the whole time this segment's going on, right? He absolutely destroys him, and at several times Moose could pin him, and every time it looks like he's going to get the pinfall, he pulls up Matthew Palmer's shoulder to deliver more punishment because he's trying to send a message to Willie Mack. What happens? Well, eventually Willie Mack gets involved. He distracts Moose somehow, maybe comes out of the ring, maybe he's at the top of the ramp, maybe Moose chases him or something like that. Either way, I think potentially we could see a scenario where Matthew Palmer does last the 3 minutes here. It's an embarrassment to Moose, and then it leads up nicely to this match with this I Quit match with Willie Mack at Genesis. I think potentially we could see something like that. Of course, we could see another way that they book it, and that Matthew Palmer gets very close eventually, but eventually Moose gets the spear and he gets the victory. So there's lots of different ways they could do that. Put it this way though, I wouldn't be stunned in the slightest if actually Moose does get outlasted by Matthew Palmer. Matthew Palmer does last the 3 minutes when it comes to Moose. I wouldn't be shocked at all there. So that's something also to look forward to tonight. I've mentioned it several times as well on the channel, and I'll mention it again. I do think Moose will eventually become the Impact World Champion in 2021. When that happens, I don't know now, because I think Kenny Omega's arrival in Impact Wrestling has kind of opened that picture up a lot, because it looked like for a long time we were going to get Moose versus Rich Swann at Hard to Kill for the Impact World Championship. We now know that's not the case because we've got the 6-man tag team match main event. I also think eventually we're going to get Kenny Omega versus Rich Swann for the Impact World Championship, and I think Kenny Omega's going to win. So, as I mentioned before, where does that put Moose in all of this situation? The question and answer there is I don't really know. I don't know where Moose fits into that. I still do think with the way that he was booked, the way that he was primed, coming out of Bound for Glory, the big victory over EC3, the way that he's feuding with Rich Swann's best friend in Willie Mack right now, the way that he's several times had brief confrontations with Rich Swann backstage or in the ring, especially at Final Resolution, the way that show went off the air. Moose versus Rich Swann is going to happen. Moose becoming the Impact World Champion is going to happen, because I think that's the way that they end that storyline of him holding the TNA World Heavyweight Championship, is by unifying it with the Impact World Championship. Where that happens, I don't know, but I still do think it is going to happen in 2021. We also have Knockouts Tag Team Title Tournament matches because we have a semi-final match as Jordynne Grace and Jazz face off against Havoc and Nevaeh, who will face Kiera Hogan and Tasha Steelz in the final of the Knockouts Tag Team Title Tournament, January 16 at Hard to Kill, because we have a sinister semi-final matchup here. Now, who's going to win this one? This is interesting because I've said from the start that I think Jordynne Grace and Jazz will get to the final. That was a big story that they were telling even prior to the tournament starting. Who was going to be Jordynne Grace's tag team partner? It was eventually revealed to be Jazz. And I think the story, I'm going to stick with my prediction way back when. So I think Jordynne Grace and Jazz will win this match tonight. I think they'll move on to the final at Hard to Kill and they'll face Kiera Hogan and Tasha Steelz. But I think that Jordynne Grace and Jazz will lose that match because we know that Jazz is retiring. She's actually going to do her retirement tour in 2021. Obviously, there were plans for her to do it in 2020. The pandemic changed that, so she had pretty much just retired. She'd come back for this final run in Impact Wrestling, a company where she's never competed before. And then it would look like she was going to ride off into the sunset. Now it looks like she's going to do that 2021 retirement tour in infrequent bookings. But I said this from the start when Jazz, even before I think Jazz was announced as Jordynne Grace's tag team partner, that I felt that Jordynne Grace and her partner would get to the final, now being Jazz. And at the pay-per-view, Jordynne Grace and Jazz would lose. And after the match, you say, well, I guess that's it. Jazz is going to retire. We were this close, but we didn't do it. And then Jordynne Grace just turns heel, beats the hell out of Jazz, and sends Jazz off into retirement. I still do think that's what they'll do. So I think Jordynne Grace and Jazz will win this match tonight and go on to face Kiera Hogan and Tasha Steelz in the finals of that Knockout Tag Team Title Tournament at Hard to Kill. I think Kiera Hogan and Tasha Steelz, they should win it considering they are a legitimate tag team. And I mentioned it in the Impact Wrestling Ones to Watch in 2021 video. I think they're going to have a massive year as being the flag bearers as the Knockouts Tag Team Champions. Could be wrong, have been before, but I think Jordynne Grace and Jazz will win this one tonight, and then I think they'll go on to face Kiera Hogan and Tasha Steelz at Hard to Kill in a couple of weeks' time. We also have some X Division matches tonight because, of course, the Super X Cup returns at Genesis, which is on January 9 on Impact Plus. But before the High Flying Tournament begins, we get a preview of the action as Casey Navarro, Crazy Steve, Blake Christian, and Ace Austin compete in a four-way free-for-all. Who will be victorious in this match as we head into Genesis and the Super X Cup? Now, I'm just very, very glad to see Ace Austin back on Impact Wrestling TV. We've done quite a few videos talking about him, his status with the company at this point, his lack of being used on television by the Impact Wrestling creative team and officials. It was disappointing in the way that that ended, especially coming out of Bound for Glory, considering in July, this guy was in the main event of Slammiversary. He's competing for the World Championship, had a potential to become the youngest Impact World Champion in the company's history. He was the last man to be eliminated as well. It was disappointing to see him not used, except on, was it one episode of Explosion? But as the year went on, as December went on, we saw in those last two episodes of the year that he was named as X Division Star of the Year, which is promising, and he was also entered into the Super X Cup at Genesis, which I think he will also win, which says to me we've got plans once again for Ace Austin, as there should be. There's no excuse to not have him on TV whatsoever, so I'm excited to see him compete in the Super X Cup because I do think he will win. If he doesn't, it's not the end of the world, but I just want to see him used on TV. You've got him under contract for at least 2-3 more years. He's a bona fide main event star waiting to happen. He's a world champion waiting to happen. We need to see more of him. It's no excuse to have Ace Austin off TV for a period of time. I know you talk about getting stale and, you know, coming off of TV isn't necessarily a bad thing, and being out of the spotlight for a little while isn't necessarily a bad thing. I get that, but Ace Austin's too big of a talent. He makes the show better. So you need to have Ace Austin on TV more, I think. So I'm excited to see that he's back. I'm excited to see that he's featured in. I do think he'll win the Super X Cup, but maybe that means he won't win tonight. Who will win tonight? I think it might be someone like Casey Navarro or Blake Christian. I really do, because I think they're the less established names, and I think they want to try, if they're Impact Wrestling, to try and imply to the audience, look, anyone can win. Anyone can win. It's not the established name like Ace Austin. They're trying to put a bit of doubt in the mind of the viewer watching at home and the viewer watching for Genesis on Saturday. So I think it's likely going to be Casey Navarro, Blake Christian. Could be wrong though. Could see Ace Austin dominate tonight and then dominate at the Super X Cup at Genesis, and I wouldn't have a problem with either of those scenarios. And finally, we also have a tag team match where we have Eric Young teaming up with Joe Doring to face off against Rhino and Cousin Jake in a tag team match. Of course, Rhino is teaming up with Cousin Jake at the moment because Heath is still on the injured list. I would assume that Heath will return relatively soon. I mentioned that it's a big year for him as well. I think he can be a world champion, even if he's a comedy character for a long period of time. I think he absolutely has it in him. If you don't think he does, go and watch the promo he did with Drew McIntyre on Raw last year over the summer. It was spectacular. It sucks he got injured the way that he did at Bound for Glory, because it was the culmination of this storyline that I think was going to go to even bigger places, but unfortunately we didn't get to see that. But of course, in the interim, we can have Rhino teaming up with Cousin Jake, because of course Cody Deaner is part of this Eric Young faction with Joe Doring, which I'm actually quite excited about. I think there's way more to come with this stable, and I'm glad to see that Eric Young is doing something. It would be really disappointing to see him win the World Championship, have the great 2020 that he did when he returned to Impact Wrestling, then suddenly not be doing anything for a prolonged period of time and sort of fade away into the wilderness. That would just be so not right, considering how great he was during those summer and autumn months last year. So I'm excited about the stable. Not fully convinced on it. I think it does need to be a bit more fleshed out at the moment. Maybe getting more members in. Joe Doring, maybe Cody Deaner, of course, as well. Maybe one more name might be beneficial in there, but I like it and I think it does have potential, but I'm not totally sold on it yet. In terms of who's going to win this one, you would think, considering the momentum that they have, Eric Young and Joe Doring would come out on top on this one. I wouldn't be shocked if Cody Deaner also gets involved as well. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on Impact Wrestling on AXS TV tonight? Let me know your thoughts and predictions in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about Impact Wrestling, WWE, AEW, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So make sure to get involved with the community below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if you haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.